My name is Daniel Carter, and today, I am going to share with you a story that I never imagined I would be telling, a story that changed my entire perspective on life, death, and the unseen world. It all started as an ordinary morning. Nothing seemed out of place. I woke up, stretched my arms, and took in the golden sunlight streaming through my bedroom window. The scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as I prepared a simple breakfast. Birds were singing outside, and everything felt routine, just another day like any other. After finishing my meal, I grabbed my keys, checked my watch, and headed out for work. The sky was clear, the roads were familiar, and life moved forward as expected. As I drove through the city streets, my mind was occupied with thoughts about my day ahead, meetings, deadlines, and a lunch appointment with an old friend. Everything felt so normal, so predictable. Then, in a single moment, everything changed. I remember glancing at my phone, just for a second, to check a message from my mother. It was a habit, something I had done countless times before. But that fleeting moment of distraction was the last thing I remembered before my world was torn apart. A massive truck ran a red light. I didn't see it coming. The impact was sudden, violent, an explosion of metal and shattered glass. My body was thrown, my vision blurred, and everything around me spun out of control. I could hear the deafening sound of screeching tires, the crunch of metal collapsing in on itself, and then, silence. But it wasn't an empty silence. It wasn't the silence of unconsciousness or oblivion. It was something else entirely. It was the beginning of something far beyond my comprehension. The first thing I noticed was the silence, not an empty, hollow silence, but a profound stillness, as if the entire world had momentarily paused. Then, awareness flooded in. I was no longer inside my body. At first, it was disorienting. I could see everything happening, yet I wasn't part of it in the way I had always known. My crumpled car lay twisted in the middle of the intersection, smoke rising from the wreckage. Glass shards glistened under the sun. Bystanders were rushing toward the accident, some shouting, others dialing their phones. And then, I saw myself. My body, lifeless, motionless, slumped over the steering wheel. But I felt nothing. No pain. No panic. No fear. Instead, there was a strange sense of detachment, as though I had been released from something heavy, something limiting. I was floating, no, not just floating, but being pulled, gently yet irresistibly, by an unseen force. Then, I saw it. A tunnel, but unlike anything I had ever imagined. It was not a tunnel of darkness, nor was it simply a passageway. It was alive, pulsating with energy, shifting between waves of light and shadow. It felt vast, infinite, as if it stretched beyond the boundaries of time itself. I wasn't alone. There were presences, figures of light, moving alongside me, guiding me forward. They didn't speak, yet I could feel them communicating in a way beyond words, beyond thoughts. They radiated warmth, peace, and something deeper, an understanding, as if they knew everything about me, my past, my choices, my very essence. Then, ahead, I saw it, a radiance so brilliant, so pure, that it defied description. It wasn't just light, it was a presence, living, conscious, powerful. Unlike the harsh glare of the sun, this light was inviting, filled with an overwhelming sense of love and belonging. I wanted to go toward it. Every part of me felt drawn to it, as if it were calling me home. But then, I felt something else. Behind me. A weight, heavy, cold, oppressive. A force that whispered, pulling at me, filling my mind with doubt, with fear. It was as if shadows themselves had taken form, gripping at the edges of my soul, trying to tether me back, to keep me from moving forward. The whispers grew louder. They weren't just sounds, they were thoughts, deep, unsettling thoughts. You don't belong there. Turn back. It's not for you. It's too late. And then, a voice. Strong. Clear. Unshakable. Keep moving. The moment those words rang out, the whispers scattered like smoke in the wind. The weight lifted. The darkness recoiled. And I continued forward, toward the light. As I emerged from the tunnel, a profound realization settled over me: I was no longer on Earth. Yet, this place felt more real, more vivid, more alive than anything I had ever known. The very air shimmered with an energy beyond comprehension, as if the fabric of existence itself was woven with light and sound in perfect harmony. Before me stood beings, figures of pure radiance, neither male or female, yet exuding a power and authority that made me instinctively aware of my own insignificance. Their presence was overwhelming, not in a fearful way, but in a way that made me feel as though I stood in the presence of something ancient, wise, and deeply connected to the very essence of creation. They did not speak with words. They didn't need to. Every thought, every question that flickered through my mind was answered instantaneously, not with speech, but with direct understanding, as if knowledge itself was being poured into my soul. And what they showed me shattered every assumption I had ever held about reality. I saw layers of existence, dimensions stacked upon dimensions, intricately woven together. The physical world, the one I had known, was merely the surface, like the thinnest veil over something infinitely vast and complex. Behind that veil, an unseen battle was raging, one that had been fought since the dawn of time. It was not a battle of swords and bloodshed, but of wills, choices, and unseen forces. I saw Earth, yet not as we see it. The cities, the nations, the people, all of it was interwoven with streams of light and darkness. Every prayer, every act of kindness, every moment of faith radiated like brilliant fire, pushing back shadows that slithered and coiled, seeking to spread despair and corruption. I saw unseen hands at work, whispering lies into the ears of leaders, fanning the flames of war, division, and deception. But I also saw angels, beings of light, standing guard over those who sought truth, strengthening them in ways they never realized. Then, I saw something that made my soul tremble. The world was approaching a pivotal moment in time. The year 2025 loomed before me like a glowing ember in the great tapestry of history. It was not just another year, it was a turning point. I didn't know why or how, but I knew with absolute certainty that events were aligning, forces were gathering, and humanity stood at the edge of something profound. A great awakening, or a great falling away. A moment ere the choices of individuals and nations alike would shape the future in ways beyond comprehension. The battles waged in hidden realms were accelerating, converging towards something imminent. And then, one of the beings of light turned to me. My soul trembled at the weight of its gaze, yet there was no condemnation in it, only truth, only purpose. You have seen. You must remember. A surge of energy coursed through me, as if something had been imprinted upon my very essence. And before I could ask what it meant, before I could fully grasp what I had witnessed, I was pulled back. Rushing. Falling. Descending. And then, darkness. Silence. A single heartbeat. And I awoke. I was no longer merely observing, I was being shown. Every image, every event unfolded before me with startling clarity, as if time itself had bent to reveal what lay ahead. The world stood on the edge of something unprecedented. Nations were on the brink, teetering between order and collapse. I saw cities engulfed in protests, crowds filling the streets, their voices raised in anger and desperation. Societies were more divided than ever, not just politically, but spiritually. Truth itself seemed under siege. And then, at the center of it all, I saw a man returning. I recognized him immediately, Donald Trump. Yet, as I watched, I understood that what I was witnessing was not just about politics or governments, it was something far greater. Beneath the surface, an invisible war was raging, one that had been building for years but was now reaching a decisive moment. His return was not just a political event, it was a shift, a tremor in the spiritual realm that would send ripples through the fabric of reality. Hope and chaos would rise in equal measure. Then, I heard his voice. Jesus spoke to me, his presence undeniable, his words filled with urgency. Many will not see it, but the world is at a crossroads. The forces of darkness seek total control, but they are being restrained. My people must rise up in prayer. The weight of his words pressed into my soul. I was shown things I had never imagined, forces moving behind world leaders, unseen hands shaping policies, laws, and decisions. Some leaders knowingly align themselves with darkness, embracing power at any cost. Others remained blind, their choices unknowingly paving the way for something sinister. But amid the chaos, there was hope. I saw believers, ordinary men and women, standing in unity, their prayers forming walls of fire against the advancing darkness. They were not politicians, not world leaders, not military generals, yet their power was undeniable. When they prayed, barriers of light rose, holding back the shadow that sought to consume everything. They were the remnant, the faithful ones who still saw the truth, who still fought for righteousness. Then, Jesus revealed something that sent a shiver through my very being. The world was on the verge of deception. If people did not stand firm, if they allowed lies to take root, if they let fear and division guide them, then the darkness would spread unchecked. 2025 was not just another year. It was a test, a reckoning, a moment when the fate of nations would be decided. I saw a vision of two paths. On one path, the world fell deeper into chaos. Deception took hold, and people willingly embraced the lies fed to them. Freedom was traded for security, truth was twisted beyond recognition, and those who stood for righteousness were silenced, cast out, persecuted. On the other path, light broke through. It was not an easy path, not without struggle, but it was the path of awakening. People's eyes were opened, and a great revival swept across the earth. The darkness was pushed back, not by politics, not by governments, but by the prayers and unwavering faith of those who refused to bow to deception. And then, I saw one final moment, a moment that had not yet come to pass, but one that would change everything. Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with both sorrow and determination. The choice is in their hands. But time is short. The vision faded. And I awoke, gasping for breath, my heart pounding. The message was clear. The world was at a tipping point. The battle was not just political, it was spiritual. And the year 2025 would mark the beginning of something no one could ignore. Jesus extended his hand toward me, and in an instant, my eyes were opened. I saw prayer, not as I had once understood it, not as mere words spoken into the air, but as something living, something powerful. It was a force, a weapon, a shield, a direct link between heaven and earth. The spiritual realm stretched out before me like a battlefield, vast and teeming with movement. I saw prayers rising from the earth, some weak and fragile, barely lifting beyond the lips of those who spoke them. Others, however, were different. They burned with intensity, cutting through the darkness like flaming swords. These prayers did not just rise, they surged, striking against unseen forces, scattering shadows that had crept unnoticed into the world of men. For the first time, I understood. I had wasted so much time on empty prayers, words spoken without faith, without conviction, without power. How many times had I prayed out of habit, out of obligation, without truly believing that my words could change anything? And yet, here before me, Jesus revealed the truth. The enemy fears a praying church. That was why so many believers were distracted, indifferent, skeptical of prayer's power. That was why the world was filled with noise, constant distractions to keep people from seeking God. If the people of God truly understood what happened when they prayed, if they could see what I was seeing now, they would never cease to pray. Then, Jesus showed me something heartbreaking. Many churches, once strongholds of faith, had become lifeless. Their prayers had faded, their voices softened, their passion dimmed. The fire that once burned brightly had been replaced with comfort, with compromise. I saw pastors who had once preached with boldness now tiptoeing around the truth, afraid to offend, afraid to take a stand. I saw congregations that had once gathered in fervent prayer now consumed with trivial debates, more focused on programs and performances than on seeking God's presence. The enemy had crept in, not with open war, but with subtlety, with complacency. And many did not even realize they had already surrendered. But then, I saw something else. In the hidden places, out of sight from the world, small groups of believers gathered. They were not famous. They had no grand stages, no massive followings. But they prayed. They prayed with fire, with unwavering faith, with a desperation that shook the heavens. These were the ones the enemy feared. Not the polished, well-funded institutions that had lost their way, but the unknown, the overlooked, the faithful, the persistent. These were the warriors in the hidden war. And because of them, the enemy's plans were being disrupted. I saw demons scattering in terror at the prayers of an elderly woman, praying alone in her room. I saw dark plots crumbling because of the whispered prayers of a few young men in a basement. I saw chains breaking, territories shifting, lives being transformed, not because of grand sermons or massive revivals, but because of the humble, unseen prayers of the faithful. Then Jesus turned to me, his eyes full of both sorrow and determination. Revival will not come from the grand platforms. It will not rise from the powerful or the famous. It will come from those the world ignores. From the ones who still believe. From those who pray when no one is watching. And as he spoke, I knew, this was the battle. The war was not just waged in government offices or on political stages. It was fought in secret, in quiet places, in the hearts of those who refused to bow to fear, who refused to give in to apathy. It was fought through prayer. And the question remained, who would rise and fight? Jesus turned to me, his eyes like fire, burning with a love so intense, yet filled with urgency. It was as if he saw straight into my soul, into every doubt, every hesitation, every unspoken fear. And then, he spoke two words that sent a shudder through my entire being. Tell them. In that moment, I understood. This was why I was sent back. This was why I had been shown the things I had seen. It was not just a vision to be marveled at, it was a warning, a commission, a burden placed upon my heart that I could not ignore. Time was short. The world was on the brink, standing at the threshold of something that would test every soul, every nation. The battle lines had been drawn, though most still could not see them. The forces of darkness were not waiting for permission, they were already at work, infiltrating, deceiving, preparing the world for what was coming. Jesus' voice, firm yet filled with sorrow, echoed through me. They must prepare. They must pray. They must wake up. I could feel the weight of his words pressing into me, a divine urgency I could not shake. The time for complacency was over. The time for playing church, for comfortable faith, for passive belief, it was all coming to an end. I was about to plead, to ask more, to stay just a little longer in that place of perfect understanding, but suddenly, a force pulled me backward. The light began to fade, the voices dimming into silence. The warmth, the peace, the clarity, it was all slipping away. And in its place came something else. Pain. Agonizing, suffocating pain. I gasped, my lungs burning as if they had been starved of air. My body convulsed. The sounds of machines beeping frantically filled my ears. Voices, urgent, frantic, desperate. He's back. Get him stabilized. Stay with us. I blinked, the harsh fluorescent lights of a hospital room coming into focus. My chest ached with every breath, my limbs heavy as if they were made of stone. I could feel the weight of my own body again, something I had not felt in what seemed like an eternity. I had been gone for over 5 minutes. 5 minutes without a heartbeat. 5 minutes beyond the veil. Yet, I had returned. Not by accident. Not by chance. I had returned with a mission. My life was no longer my own. I had been given something, a message, a warning, a calling. And whether people would listen or not, whether they believed or dismissed it as foolishness, I had no choice but to speak. Because the time was coming. And the choice before us all was clear. Wake up, or be swept away. I know that many will dismiss this story. Some will call it imagination, a delusion, or the result of a near-death hallucination. Some will scoff, saying it was just my mind playing tricks on me, a chemical reaction in my brain as I hovered between life and death. But I do not care. I have seen what is coming, and I cannot stay silent. This is not just my story, it is a warning. The world is at a tipping point. The forces of darkness are moving faster than ever, shaping events, influencing decisions, setting the stage for something that most people cannot even see. And yet, many are asleep, distracted by entertainment, consumed by their daily routines, lulled into complacency by the illusion of normalcy. But nothing is normal anymore. If you are paying attention, you can sense it. Something is shifting. Something is coming. You can feel it in the instability of nations, in the growing divisions among people, in the rising deception that blinds so many to the truth. You can see it in how evil is no longer hidden but proudly displayed, how morality has been flipped upside down, and how those who stand for righteousness are mocked, silenced, or worse. And yet, you have a choice. You can ignore this warning. You can dismiss it as the ramblings of a man who saw something during a brush with death. You can continue with your life as if nothing is happening, as if everything will always remain the same. Or you can wake up. You can prepare, not in fear, but with faith, with wisdom, with discernment. Understand this, the greatest battle is not in politics, not in the economy, not in the streets, it is in the unseen world. It is a war for souls, a war for truth, a war that has been waged since the beginning of time but is now accelerating toward its climax. And if we do not stand firm now, if we do not pray, if we do not seek God, if we do not recognize the times we are living in, we may lose ground that we can never reclaim. This is not about choosing a political side. This is not about fearmongering. This is about truth. This is about eternity. I do not claim to know everything. I do not have all the answers. But I know this. Jesus is real. Heaven is real. The battle is real. And 2025 will be a year unlike any other. It will be a year of shaking. A year of exposure. A year where the unseen will begin to manifest in ways the world cannot ignore. A year where choices will matter like never before, for individuals, for families, for nations. There will be deception, stronger, more convincing than anything we have seen before. Many will be led astray, even those who once stood firm in their faith. But there will also be revival, a great awakening among those who are willing to see, willing to hear, willing to fight the battle that is not against flesh and blood, but against the powers of darkness that seek total control. The time for lukewarm faith is over. The time for playing church, for comfortable Christianity, for passive belief, it is finished. The line has been drawn. Which side will you stand on? Will you remain asleep, or will you rise? Because whether you are ready or not, the battle has already begun.